answers for, you know, Connor versus Edmonds, Rondell Moore, how much are you going to play? Michelle versus Akers.
Matt Meiselman, we're live. You're already spilling the beans on what you want to talk about in the show.
Is that what just happened? Did that carry over?
I didn't want to interrupt you because you were just in such a good flow, but I didn't want to make it too awkward.
What people who are listening don't realize is we just finished the show and now we're going to do it again. That was the end.
Yeah. Well, hi everybody. Welcome in. This is the Slate. It is a holiday today. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Of course, a lot of importance to this day, and we're happy to be here to talk some football and have a game tonight, the first ever wild card weekend, Monday night football game. We will take you close to 6 o'clock tonight because, this is kind of our Monday routine. We get to do this one more time, get to preview a game and get you ready. We didn't have a Monday night game last week because of week 18. So this does feel a little bit different, I suppose. Jeff Ulrich is here. Matt Meiselman, you've already heard from him, of course, just discussing names and speaking his mind. Hope you guys are doing well, have enjoyed the football and what else we kind of saw this weekend on the field. I wouldn't call it great football at times, but overall good weekend, and we're getting ready here for round 3, Rams, Cardinals. Jeff, what's your opening thought on this game? We're going to talk a lot about this game tonight.
Yeah, so a lot of movement on this game. Obviously, this was at 4.5 early in the week, and it has moved down in the Cardinals' favor. Well, they're not favorites, but it's moved down towards the Cardinals, and it's now at +3. It's not even 3.5. I think a lot of people are thinking, or were thinking the same with me, as I'm thinking about this game. The Rams, to me, reek of a team that are in a little bit of trouble, and it's not necessarily that they're a bad team, but they've got some things working against them on defense. They've got 3 key players out. I think if you look at this game, you take a step back too, and you realize, yes, the Cardinals are 1-5 over the last 5 games, but Kyler Murray has been the better quarterback here as well. And then you add up the injuries and you start to think, why was the spread ever 4.5? Maybe the injuries, weren't factored in then, but I think this line should be right around 3.5. I think that I still at 3 probably lean towards the Cardinals, but I think that 3 is appropriate. And I think these two teams are very close. They have very similar coaches, as I've said all week. They have similar styles, and kind of expecting. I don't even know if I'm expecting a close game. These teams. One of them feels like they're going to play well, and the other one's probably not going to show up. Like I wouldn't be shocked if we got some kind of blowout again, but I just feel like the line is still appropriate because I don't think there's much between these two teams.
Meiselman, look, the trend of the weekend, we've had 4 games or 5 games? I've already lost count. I'm already lost. We've had 5, right? 5 games. Yes, 5. Pardon me. We've had 5 games. And every team that's won has been playing better football than their opponent at that stage of the year. Maybe the one argument you can make against that is the Derek Carr Raiders, little magic there at the end. They of course had to win some games to get in, but Cincinnati was playing just as well. Maybe one of the hottest teams in the league. We've done a lot of Bengals discussion on this.
That was the closest game of the week so far too. So
right. So and you consider what I just said, that those were 2 teams heading in the right direction, playing some of their best football at the end of the year. Which that's not saying a lot for the Raiders. They had some really low spots in the mid part of the season off the field. So I get where Jeff's going with this, but why should we give the Cardinals a sniff if like Jeff's first point, I think, is the number 1 point of the night, that they're 1-5 in their last 6 games?
It's a little hard to say. So in some sense, the Cardinals are getting healthier potentially. Because we may have Chase Edmonds and James Conner playing together, which has not happened. I mean, I think it's been 2 months since both of them played. They're both running backs, so I'm not really sure how much this matters, but Rondell Moore also has a chance to be back. J.J. Watt activated off IR. They don't have DeAndre Hopkins, though, so this is a team where a lot of players have been in and out of the lineup, and Kyler Murray also was playing through an injury, we think. I mean, we know there was some kind of leg ankle issue earlier, and then maybe there was a shoulder issue. I think this was the game, just to refer back to when we previewed it last week, where I think the 3 of us agreed it had the most uncertainty of any of the games of this weekend, because just like the way that players on the Cardinal side in particular have been in and out of the lineup. And we still don't know, 3 hours before the game exactly what the players that are going to be active are. And even if we did know, what the snap counts are for the Rams on the running back side, we don't really know the Michelle Akers breakdown either. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the personnel, but then these are teams that have both just been so up and down throughout the year. Like, it wouldn't surprise me that much. I mean, even though the Cardinals are 1-5 over the last 6, they did go into Dallas and win 2 games ago. I mean, they have the talent too. So I just still feel very unsure about this game. Yeah, maybe there's a blowout in either direction. I think that'll be a pretty interesting thing to look into for Showdown, where I think most people are going to play pretty similar looking lineups. So we'll definitely get there. But the other thing that we talked about last week too is that we thought the total would go up and there would be potentially an opportunity to bet the under at a number north of 50, maybe even 51. I think I thought it would reach 51.5. It was around 50 or 50.5 a week ago. It's 49 now. So like, I think that maybe some sharp betting's coming in on the under. Like, I'm just very confused about this game. So I'm just curious to see how it plays out. But yeah, I really just don't have a good feel for it because of just how much these teams have changed over the course of the season.
So these two teams met in week 4 in Los Angeles. And to Meiselman's point, we did see Edmonds and Connor together. We saw Hopkins. We saw Moore. Of course, Cam Akers now is back in the mix. He didn't play in either game, talking the other side now. But looking back at that first game, when they first played each other in LA, Rams, 4-point favorite. Total was at 54.5. It hit. The final score was 37-20. And then the Monday night game, we were together to preview that game as well on this show. And the final score was 30-23. Rams with the win. Cardinals won the first one. Total finished at 51. That hit the over. And the closing line was Arizona -3. So it's similar again. So that's interesting, right? To your point about the total. Sitting at 49, it's hit both times. It's hit in the 50s between these two teams. Yeah, I mean, it's so close. I mean, what are we missing? What are we missing here?
When you think about these teams, you think offense, I think, is as well as what you're trying to get at. Obviously we have the recency history. I don't necessarily look at teams' recent history between each other when I'm necessarily betting overs, but you can certainly do it. And I think with these two teams, the style that they play, the up tempo, they got Kyler Murray on one side and like the high flying, Rams offense, you could say, on the other side. And it's indoor game too. So 49 probably feels a little bit low. And I think you could take it a step further too. I talked about the defensive deficiencies on the Rams. Like, the Cardinals haven't exactly been good. There's some of their defensive metrics that look really bad, like especially against the run. I mean, LA could just start running the ball a lot and then force the Cardinals to play even faster. So yeah, I think I'm kind of on board with what you're saying. And again, I'm just going to keep coming back to this Rams defensive thing. I just don't think enough people are making a big deal about it. Like, Jordan Fuller is their play caller back there. He's an absolutely huge loss. So I really think that's going to be a style game. And it does have me leaning over. So even if I don't necessarily put as much stock into the recent games they played, this is a spot where I would much rather be over 49 than under it.
Adam Schefter, really quick, also just for a note on the defense for the Cardinals. J.J. Watt will return today to the active roster. It was active.
It's not really a big deal, but it's not. It's better than not having J.J. Watt. I mean,
I think that name is moving the line though a little bit, right? I think that the reason the total's coming down a half point and the line is shifted, people recognize him, whether he's that impactful anymore or not. You see that name and you're like, wow, J.J. Watt, he's one of, for a casual fan, one of the 12 defensive players they've heard of. So that definitely could move the point spread.
I want to prop on the amount of times. I want to prop on the amount of times the ESPN broadcast cuts to J.J. Watt standing on the sideline. That's what I want to see, because
look, I'm not going to stand up for J.J. Watt at this point in his career, but he's a pretty he's a good leader, right? I don't think it's necessarily a negative that they have him back either. No. I mean, I like the Cardinals regardless of JJ Watt's status, but I'm not going to sit here and say I don't like them a tiny bit more with JJ Watt out there to help. I mean, he's a veteran. He's been there before. And I mean, you
know what, Jeff, to your point, he was early in the year, he was the rah-rah guy rallying the guys. No one thought we were going to be any good. Everyone thought we were going to finish last in the division. No one thought we'd be here. Everyone keeps wondering if we're any good. And he just kept saying, maybe we are pretty good.
And look,
so that's fair.
It's a young team. It's a basically a rookie playoff head coach. Mm-hmm. I think JJ Watt's kind of, in some ways, he might be a bigger deal than we're making him out to be. If he makes like one play in the game, I mean, that might be all they need. But anyways, I think Matt is right. I think it is moving the line a little bit, regardless of what your opinion is.
We'll certainly dive into the showdown as well. We can go back and forth throughout the night. We've got this game. We can look ahead a little bit to next week when we wrap up, because it is just one game. And again, we're talking about, hopefully it goes better than round 3 New England Buffalo, because that's the other round 3 of the weekend.
These matchups next week are insanely good. They're juicy. They are. They're bone dripping juicy. So I think it'll be much better.
Okay. Any props we'd like to discuss? I think the props, because the running back situations, like we teased off the top, they are they make an impact, right? Of course, Edmonds, Connor, that dynamic, and then Akers being back. Meiselman, you first. You want to dive into a prop discussion? And no DeAndre Hopkins tonight too.
Right. We may have to revisit, because there's still no rushing props for James Conner or Chase Edmonds for their yardage totals, because Edmonds is going to play. Like, I think we're 99% sure Edmonds is going to play. My guess is that James Conner will at least be active, just because it's the playoffs, but it's possible that he's just not healthy enough to really make an impact. We're going to find that out at some point. It's possible we get that during the show. So once that's more clear, I think we will see props show up for those guys. At this point, though, we can't really talk about them for over-unders because they aren't here. But Rondell Moore, I think it's in a similar situation to Connor, where we likely see him active, but we don't really know how much he's going to play. I think the last time he was active, they really were just using him on special teams. Like, correct. I'm not certain that he even plays much as a receiver. So this is an interesting line here at 16.5 yards, because if he's a regular on the field, this is aggressively low. Like, he can put up 40 yards on a couple catches and no one would be surprised. And at the same time, he might not run any routes. Like, I really think there's that much variance on him. Closer to game time, we may see some alternate lines on Rondell Moore, which I think would be a lot more interesting. I just think there's a massive range of outcomes on him. So if you could bet like Rondell Moore to have 0 catches at, let's say, like plus 250 or something, I think that would be interesting. And if you like him and you think maybe they, try to force the ball to him a little bit with no DeAndre Hopkins, it's obviously a must-win game in the playoffs. Maybe you take like an alternate line at 40 or 50 yards and you get big odds on that too. So I think hopefully we get some more opportunities to bet this. I think justifiably, DraftKings Sportsbook has not posted a ton here because there's still a lot of news we're waiting for on Moore and Connor in particular. And then for Showdown too, like, it's just kind of hard to make a call on him without really getting confirmation on like if he's going to play or how much he's going to play or anything like that. But
yeah,
Rondell Moore, important situation. James Conner, important situation. Both of those are worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and Moore is really, it's because they've used Anton Wesley more too as like the third package guy. And I mean, they clearly like him a little bit. So I don't know if they're just going to say, okay, well, like Moore is more like, yeah, even if he's active, I mean, he may not run routes, but it's still interesting because if he runs like 3 and he gets like 1 target, he could hit the over there. So I don't know. Probably better DFS play in like those big showdowns.
Especially if Wesley is the chalk for Showdown, which I think is pretty likely, even if Moore plays, just looking at the pricing. Because Wesley's 1,800, Rondell Moore is more than twice as expensive as him. And we have a game where Cooper Kupp's playing, Stafford's playing, Murray's playing. Like, you need a cheap guy, and there isn't one except for Antoine Wesley is the guy. You don't have who's another player below 2,500 who's even worth considering for this game.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, he really should be like 80% owned. He probably won't even be that highly owned, but he should be. You're right. There's really no one. Benjamin. Don't think so. And
that's someone who's probably not even going to get a carry if Connor and Edmonds are both playing. So it changes a lot it doesn't just change Connor and Edmonds if the other one is out. Like, Edmonds is better if there's no Connor, obviously, but you also then, you bring in Ward and Benjamin, who could potentially play a little too. But if you have both Connor and Edmonds at their full roles, like, those are the only 2 running backs that are going to be on the field at any point in the game, unless one gets re-injured.
Just to clarify, I mean, Benjamin, even if Connor sits, like, he's probably not going to get many touches. So, I mean, I wouldn't even touch that. I mean, Rondale Moore could definitely be a key figure in showdown. I was just going to touch on the receiving props too, since we're there. I mean,
Sure.
I definitely don't mind going over on Christian Kirk. He's got the biggest total of the Cardinals receivers, but I mean, the matchup for him, it should be the best. And the Rams receivers receiving or secondary, again, is just super banged up. I think you got to take advantage. We should get, Jalen Ramsey typically playing on the outside with AJ Green or potentially even like against Wesley. So Kirk should be the guy that gets open here. The targets have been there. I think you're still getting too low a total on him overall. So that's kind of like my favorite receiver to target outside of, just pounding Cooper Kupp's over, which probably just do. But yeah.
And he's come up pretty close, even in games he didn't get to his number, which is 53.5. He in the 40s, like you mentioned, with the targets, had a 94-yard game in there, 79 against Dallas, 86 against the Rams head to head.
He's been very close to some big games, Christian Kirk. Like, I mean, I really like him in DFS too. Yeah. But obviously the connection just hasn't quite been there with Kyler, but Kyler's still been playing well. So I don't know. This might be the last chance for them. If they put it together, I could definitely see the Cardinals pulling out this game. So
who do we think's going to get out to an early lead in this game? Like game script wise, how does it set up?
I don't know who's going to get out to an early lead, but I think it's way more important that the Cardinals take an early lead. They just Kyler just seems to be pressing a little bit more when he gets behind. I mean, I just go back to that Dallas game. He looked good in that game, and it's because they got up early. So
right.
I think it's more important for Arizona. I think the Rams still have a chance to come back, just how good they can pass and how quickly they can move the ball. But I don't like this. That's a good question, and I don't necessarily have a really good, strong answer. Again, I'm not really super high on the Rams' chances. So, I mean, I'll say Arizona, but these two teams they're just so weird and up and down, and they have deficiencies that it wouldn't shock me either way. So,
yeah, I do agree that the Cardinals players that will do well are more game script dependent. Like Cooper Kupp is going to get targets no matter what the score is. I think for the most part, Sony Michel is going to be the guy rushing no matter what the score is. But like if the Cardinals are losing, I think that lends itself more to Chase Edmonds being on the field. Like James Conner, even though he can catch passes too, I think you need a game script where the Cardinals are winning for Conner to really be good. So kind of just like playing your showdown lineups to the particular game script that you're going for. I think it's more relevant for the Cardinals where like, if you're playing for the Cardinals to win, I'm not even sure you need to play Kyler Murray. This is a team that can run the ball. Like I think if they get to the early lead, you could have a game where Edmonds and Conner are both good, depending how much they're up. Maybe Stafford has a couple of turnovers, the Cardinals get a short field and you get some touchdowns without Murray racking up a ton of yards. Not to say that I don't think Murray, I actually think Stafford is a better fade than Murray in a vacuum, but for a lineup that's playing Cardinals running backs, let's say, I think Murray, you can go away from that. The biggest question I have, aside from the news for Showdown though, and Jeff probably has a much better feel for this than I do, is will people gravitate heavily towards Zach Ertz because of the Rams injuries at safety? Is that a thing because if you look at optimizers, let's say, Zach Ertz is pretty similar to Christian Kirk and to Odell Beckham and to James Conner and Chase Edmonds. He's not going to have projections that are significantly higher than those guys. But I just feel like that name, Ertz has been around a long time. He's a tight end. There's a thing people like to play tight ends. And then tight ends would, in theory, benefit the most from having a safety hurt. So could Zach Ertz be the chalk? Because there's a lot of question marks in the mid tier of pricing, and Ertz is the one truly stable player that's priced, in this mid range.
Yeah, I definitely think Ertz will be the chalk there. The Akers, I don't think we've seen enough for people to really jump on that. And then, you go down to AJ Green, you've got the Jalen Ramsey narrative, which is it's going to scare enough people off. And also AJ Green just isn't that good anymore. So it kind of makes sense. The only other option is
like JJ Watt. He's a name, right?
He is a lot like JJ Watt at this point in his career.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, the only other option is to pay up for Odell Beckham, which again, he hasn't really been getting enough targets, and people are going to say, well, if the Rams are up, then he might not get that many targets. So I think Zach Ertz is definitely the chalk in that range. And again, if the like Matt said, if the Cardinals get up, I mean, they are a team that will run the ball, and Zach Ertz could easily end with like 6 targets if that is the case. So he's a pivotal guy, I think, with how this game goes. And I think the other thing is you can fade him regardless. You can play him if you think the Cardinals are going to be behind, but I think going up to Christian Kirk and stacking him with Kyler Murray and then filling out the rest of your lineup with Rams, if you think the Cardinals are going to lose and be behind and passing, is fine. Because like I said, I mean, I think it's a good matchup for Christian Kirk as well. So
can we just map out a little like what the chalk looks like here? Because I think Ertz at captain actually will be pretty popular. I mean, Kupp may be a little higher on there, but let's just, for argument's sake, say Ertz is among the most popular captains. Like if you start this lineup with Ertz, both quarterbacks, and Cooper Kupp, like you're not playing the mid-range. You're now playing a kicker and Antoine Wesley. Like that's the lineup. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I think the chalk is. It could be either kicker, but I think you put Wesley and you put a kicker, and like this will be the lineup we have on screen here. With either kicker is going to be massively duplicated. Like this, I think that this is the lineup that there are the most of in like the largest contest. So avoid this at all costs if you're playing GPPs. And if you're playing cash games, maybe this is fine. Like this is a pretty good lineup. At least it's a way to start. But I'm trying to stay away from this.
Ertz at captain, Kupp, Kyler, and then Wesley is going to be an insanely popular start for sure. And then, I mean, I won't go with the rest, so we won't give you complete lineups or anything, but regardless of what combo you use from there, it's not going to be that unique. So yeah. Ertz, the thing is, like I said, I mean, the matchup for Ertz does benefit the most of any player on the Cardinals, I think, probably from these issues, maybe the running backs too, but I think that if you're not interested in playing Ertz, I think the way to play the big GPPs was to go heavier on the Cardinals running back lineups where they're winning the game and going ahead. So,
yeah. And I should say, if James Conner doesn't play tonight, a lot of what we already talked about will be moot, because Chase Edmonds is the chalk if there's no James Conner. Like, yes, it'll probably be relatively late news. That'll probably only be 45 minutes to an hour before the game, if that is what happens, if James Conner is inactive. But there are enough people paying attention that Chase Edmonds will still get like 70% or more, because him being a mid-priced player as the main running back, like it's so far underpriced that enough people will figure it out. But if Connor's playing, like, Edmonds is going to be pretty contrarian. Connor himself will be pretty contrarian. Rondell Moore, like those are the guys I want to play. So it's a little tough because the idea that the Cardinals are going to win like 35-7 and the winning lineup is going to have 5 Cardinals and 1 Ram. Like I do think the Cardinals have a good chance to win, like Jeff has been saying, but I'm not playing for that. But you could have a lineup where it's like Connor and Edmonds are the 2 best Cardinals, and then you play 4 Rams and you play for a game where the Cardinals just run the ball like crazy, have a lead, and then Stafford has to throw it to everybody. So to me, that seems perfectly reasonable. I mean, I probably do want to have 1 Cardinals receiver in there somewhere. I do think the game will be relatively close, but you definitely can have a lineup that's like Cardinals running with Rams passing. I think that sets up to be pretty contrarian.
I think too, just to end this, doesn't have to end it, but if Connor does play and is active, I mean, I still think fading him is fine. Like he hasn't practiced all week. You could play Kyler and Chase Edmonds as your 2 Cardinals and then come back. And you could potentially just get access to all the rushing there. So yeah, anyways, I think we're on the same page with how the game's going to go if the Cardinals are ahead. So
yeah.
Well,
I do think that, just the last point on Connor, I do think he could be like only 15%. Like people are going to be scared of his workload.
Right. And maybe play Kyler and Connor. Like, I mean, it's a good point. Like I'm a Chase Edmonds, like aficionado. I'm really disappointed that like Connor got the time over him, but Cliff Kingsbury clearly likes James Conner. If he is active, if he is healthy, it's probably going to be the James Conner show. So that's a good point. My Chase Edmonds bias is showing as per usual. So
it's okay. I like both of them, so it's not like I totally disagree. I think you definitely can play both guys.
Yeah.
As we do sometimes on the show, we like to put the 2 worlds and see how they can relate to one another. The showdown and the betting side, and maybe everything we just discussed, the contrarian showdown lineup, is why the total's at 49. Maybe we do get our lower scoring defensive game where, I don't know, we've got two young head coaches that could very well overthink it offensively. Or Sean McVay, Cliff Kingsbury can't relate to this, but maybe Sean McVay looks at it and says, let's just run the ball and control the clock.
Well, these two, I'll say one thing about these two coaches. They love to kick field goals. Both of these coaches love to kick field goals. They have since they came in the league. I don't know what, it's something about their analytics or from college or something, but I've never seen two head coaches who are supposedly ahead of the curve and just take field goals, even in spots where, it's actually pretty clear they shouldn't be. So yeah, there's something to that. I definitely think the under has a very good shot if the Cardinals get off to a good start. So
we had a question in one of the chats, YouTube and Twitch. Fooligan, do you guys like Stafford over 2 touchdowns? Well, the current prop on the DK Sportsbook for both quarterbacks is 1.5. Kyler Murray over 1.5, -105, under -130. Matthew Stafford, not great odds, -215 to hit the over here. Or do we like the under for Stafford if there is a presence of a running game?
There's just so much variance at the goal line, right? Like it's so tough to bet these because you can have a situation where it's 1st and goal at the 8-yard line, which sets up to have a passing touchdown, or if it's 1st and goal at the 4-yard line, you end up with a rushing touchdown. Like there's almost no systematic reason why a quarterback is going to get the touchdown versus the running back.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's just like totally fluky a lot of the time based on what the subsequent play that got the ball near the goal line, if it got to, let's say, the 8-yard line or the 4-yard line, because most times you get 1st and goal from around the 10, you're going to end up with a 2nd and goal from around the 5, and then you're probably passing from there on. It's just like really unpredictable. I mean, Matt Stafford can definitely throw 3 touchdowns in this game, but it doesn't feel like there's any particular reason to be excited about his touchdown hopes. It's just like, he might get there. The Rams should do well offensively. I think this will be a game that comes in around the betting line. Like Jeff's been saying, he thinks the Cardinals, I don't know if you're picking the Cardinals outright. I'll just give you that for a second, that you're picking them straight up. But I mean, I think that this game will probably be around like a 24-21 or 24-20. Like I think the betting lines are pretty good for it. So if the Rams score 3 touchdowns, does Stafford throw 2 of them? I mean, maybe he throws 3 of the 3. I'm just not sure.
Yeah. I mean, the only time I really even look at passing touchdowns is if I just think a line is off, or I just think a quarterback is in a better spot to potentially just have a higher volume day than the lines is really suggesting. That's not really what, like these lines are, to me, pretty correct. You got a running quarterback in Kyler who's -105 to go over 1.5. I mean, I would rather take that than Stafford's -215, because I think the Rams will run the ball as well, and then they have the potential to dominate the line of scrimmage. So I think if I'm taking a Stafford prop here, I do like his over on the passing yards, which is I think at 273.5.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, he's just he's been really solid with the yards per attempt all season long. There's really no reason to think that suddenly dips here. And I mentioned the Cardinals recently, like their metrics on defense just haven't been good against that. So I would be, if I'm targeting Stafford anything here, I actually do like going over on his passing yards.
Matthew Stafford is looking for his first career playoff win. He's 0-3 in 3 games. Those were all with the Lions. 4 touchdowns to 3 picks in those 3 games, and his yards per game with the Lions, different team, different everything. A lot of everything. 302.7 yards per game passing in those games. So that is well over the 273.5 average. We have about 10 minutes. We can kind of give I think we've hammered this game. If you have any more questions about this game, feel free to drop in some questions. Fooligan has responded. I am leaning under, so staying away from totals. Yeah, I think Meiselman hit the nail on the head. It's a boring response, but it's accurate. Like it's a crapshoot. The passing.
That's what I do. I love boring responses. It's my favorite.
No, you want to get it right. That's why we like you, Meiselman. At the end of the day, you want to get it right.
If I think it's worthy of a boring response, I'm just going to give the boring response. You can count on me for honesty, at least.
Yes, exactly.
Like Steve Buchanan, who I riled up yesterday, and then he told me he was taking the alternate line on the Rams at -9.5 because I like the Cardinals. So.
Are you suggesting that Steve maybe makes his picks out of spite? And
no, never. No, Steve would never do that. I'd never say that.
So, of course, we have we've got the other 3 games for the divisional weekend already up. The result of this game, Tampa will host the winner in Tampa Bay next Sunday in the 3:00 Eastern window. But we've got Saturday all built out here. And boy, Jeff Ulrich, I know I sound like a broken record when we do this, like Jeff Ulrich's Titans, but man, I think the Titans are being very undervalued and they're being overlooked. I love the Titans at -3. I think Joe Burrow, great season, great everything. Titans are going to have their bell cow running back in the mix. And there was just an injury today to the defensive line for Cincinnati.
So first of all, I knew I always liked you, Glash, and I think you're dead on here. I am interested to hear what Matt has to say about this game, so I'm going to be brief. I think the Bengals are a solid team. They really showed at the end of that Raiders game that they're not an elite team to me. They should have won that game by a lot more. If Burrow definitely has a shot here to make this really interesting, and that's the variance with an offense like theirs. I mean, this could get crazy, and the Titans, they just about blew a lead to Houston their last time out. So, but I am certainly in agreement. I think the Titans are getting disrespected. These two teams, I don't think, should be equal, especially with the Titans coming off a bye with Derrick Henry back. Their defense, again, just seems to get no respect considering what they did at the end of the year. I don't think Cincinnati is going to be able to run the ball. The Titans have a good pass rush, and I think that you will see them eventually take over the game. So, yeah, Titans here -3. Probably my favorite play, although we'll talk about the other games. But again, I want to hear what Matt says because I know he doesn't really like the Bengals. No, maybe not like them. He just doesn't like them.
There's a difference. There's a difference between liking them and not liking them in this situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time with this one because these are the 2 teams that I spent the most time trashing this season. Right. So I'm just like looking at these, like, does this game have to happen? I don't like either of them. I don't want to have to root for one of them or anything like that. No, I do think the Titans deserve to be at least -3. The problem is we have the juice on the Titan side. So it's -3 at -120. It's like at that point, I don't know, like, should this line be 3.5 or 4? I think probably it's difficult to know. So in general, the team that is at home off of a bye with the extra week of rest, like that is a legitimate advantage. But I think every case is different where like it's not always the same level of fatigue coming from the other side, right? Like the more banged up the road team is, the more that effect is a big deal. And, the healthier the road team is, maybe that mitigates that effect. So we're going to see the same thing for 49ers Packers, where the Packers didn't play last week either and really haven't played in 2 weeks. I don't have a great sense of how healthy Cincinnati is, right? Like Joe Burrow didn't play the last week of the regular season, but he looked fine. He's dealt with a knee injury and a hand injury throughout the season. Yeah. So he's had both of those things, but it seems like he's okay. But we just never know. So I think that it makes sense to have a lower degree of confidence on this game. I think the Titans, we kind of know what they are. The Titans are a pretty high variance, average-ish team. Like I still am pretty sure of that, where they can look really bad or really good. And I think their full package is just the team that is decent. Like they're definitely not bad. I'm not trying to say the Titans stink or anything. I think they are a deserving playoff team and an undeserving 1 seed. But I think that they're a high variance team. And we also have more variance not knowing what to get out of Derrick Henry. Like how much does this affect, how healthy is he? How much does that affect the game? So I'm just very uncertain about this one. I actually feel much more confident about the 49ers Packers game, where like this line is probably a point or two too high. Like the Packers should win, but I really feel like this line should be around a field goal. Like if the Titans won by 20 or the Bengals won by 20, I don't think either of those would shock me. If we see a blowout in Green Bay, San Francisco, that like I expect that one to be much closer. So yeah, this is like wishy-washy take on Titans Bengals, but I'll just kind of transition over to a game that I feel more strongly about, where I do think the Niners should be able to stay close against Green Bay.
Yeah. Real quick, how do you sense Meiselman? Because I know you're on top of this kind of stuff. Could this game move to 4, 3.5, 4, and also see the odds kind of flip a bit and see maybe -110 both ways?
Yeah, my sense is the public is leaning Titans. I mean, it's a little early to know yet. This line has only been out for maybe 24 hours.
Yep.
Maybe 36 hours, right? The Bengals played on Saturday. But yeah, I think my sense is the team that the public likes the most for this coming block of games is Green Bay. They're just like seen as the clear favorite in the NFC, which I think is fair. But for whatever reason, they're just a public team. I just don't think people like the Niners very much. I don't really know why.
Yeah.
I think the reason the Titans aren't more of a public team is because the Bengals are also a public team.
Yeah.
Like Joe Burrow is the favorite story for a lot of people this season. So I do think more people will be on the Titans side, but not by any extreme margin. My guess is it creeps a little towards the Titans. We see this line at 3.5. But
yeah,
okay,
I think 3.5, and I think you'll even see that line fluctuate. Like it go to 3.5 and then back down or something.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. So we've got a minute or two left here. So Matt, you can go first. And we don't have to get to Buffalo, Kansas City. We have a whole week for this. But if you have a thought here on San Fran, Green Bay, please, because I hope a week from today we're going to hear Aaron Rodgers moaning and crying about how he didn't have enough help again.
It might happen. It might happen.
Oh, it will if they don't win. It's happening. And then we're all going to be reminded of, never mind.
Yeah.
Just go.
Well, it's just, I think the Niners are a really inconsistent, good team also, where we just, like, they look so great some of the time and so bad other times. And I think it stems from Jimmy Garoppolo just being, like, aloof in some way, right? Like, there's a little bit of an Eli Manning personality to him. I don't know if that's, like, an apt comparison, but that's subjective. I mean, like, data-wise, I think the Niners are just as good of a team as the Packers. It's just that Green Bay hasn't really been playing their starters. They're much more well-rested. The game's in Green Bay. Niners aren't used to playing in the cold like that. So I'm a little torn here, but I do think the line's too high. Like, the Packers win, but it should be closer.
Yeah, the thing with the 49ers is it's really just comes down to consistency at quarterback too. Like at some point, Jimmy Garoppolo is probably going to turn the ball over, and that might even just be the difference, right?
Yes, so for sure.
But the thing is, like Matt's right, you can't hold the San Francisco offense back. I mean, they just keep scoring points regardless of like if they get behind. So I like 5.5 does seem too big. I agree. I mean, obviously I am a big believer in the Packers this year. I picked them from the start of the year to win the Super Bowl, but this is not an easy contest by any means. And I think that this one is probably the spread that I like the best for the underdog side anyways. So I mean, San Francisco is just, they're a good team to watch, but yeah, they're a little bit more inconsistent. You know, they're a little bit more, they're like a better version of the Bengals. They have a worse quarterback, but they're kind of like a better version of the Bengals. I don't know.
And there's history between these teams playing each other this particular weekend, and they've ran the ball historically well against Green Bay.
I mean, the 49ers cleaned their clock a couple of years ago, and I think the Packers returned the favor. I can't remember, but there's history.
No, I think they got him twice. I think the Niners beat him twice in the postseason.
Yeah. I mean,
I still think people are generally undervaluing Deebo Samuel and how impactful he is.
Yes.
Like, he's one of the best players in the NFL. Like, non-quarterbacks, he's right up there with them.
Yeah, he's like Tyreek Hill. Like, well, I mean, I want to say he's like Tyreek Hill today, but like Tyreek Hill 2 years ago when he was like, I don't know, maybe a little bit.
Give it time, Eiselman. Give it time. Give it time, because I'll be the first to admit it. I think Deebo Samuel's foot injury in the offseason leading into this season, folks were sleeping on him as a player and didn't have him in season long. They got him late in drafts, and
people just read too much into injuries. It's one injury and the guy's injury prone, you know, like it's.
Yep.
I'm still upset that this didn't result in more winnings, but Deebo Samuel was a 2% owned DFS player week 1 this year in Detroit in a dome against the Lions, who have the worst defense in the NFL and scored like 40 fantasy points.
We talked about that.
Problem for me is that Brandon Ayuk was also, you know, if you played the stack, he didn't do anything in week 1, but whatever. Like, the idea that Deebo was like a mid-priced player who no one played against Detroit, you can imagine what that would look like now. He'd be in every single lineup across every contest.
I mean, if people remember back to the Madden Sims Glash, who was my best season-long value? Uncle Deebo. So
it's true. Man, I'm
pretty much the only good call I made.
Looking forward to this. And then, of course, we got Kansas City, Buffalo. Next Sunday night.
Whatever. Yeah. There may be some quarterbacks playing in that game.
Green Bay, if you all watched how that game ended in Dallas yesterday, there's no question the Packers are like, Cowboys, please win. And now they've got to deal with the Niners. So should be good. Oh, and we didn't get to talk about Tom Brady on the show today because, well, he has to find out who he plays after tonight's game. So, okay, Matt, we're back tomorrow to talk about the NBA. So look forward to it. Start getting those takes sizzling, and we'll be good to go.
It's a 2-game NBA slate tomorrow, but we can have a lot. The Knicks and Warriors are both playing. Like there'll be plenty to talk about.
Make Lash talk about the PGA or something.
Yeah, I'll study up on it. I'll do what we have to do.
Hockey. We can just do hockey instead.
Do that.
All right. That's going to do it. Thanks to Daniel and Eamon behind the scenes. The Slate returns tomorrow. Also, the Sweat comes back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be getting you ready for the divisional round weekend all week. So be sure to tune in at 11 and also right around 5 o'clock. Twitter for the Slate. Thanks so much.